Alright, back to reassembly on the MS290, and I'm going to take care of this magneto coil here, the ignition coil, and these two wires, these two eyelets right here, both go into the same screw. They go into the upper screw, and then the bottom screw right here is unique because it's the only one that has a washer on it. And before I do that, I'm going to make sure that this wire that I put on here, which is the grounding wire, the kill wire, kill switch, when this point is grounded, it kills the ignition. That this is snapped into the correct location under this little retaining clip right here. This little clip right here that this has to be in. So I'm going to put the two screws in, but I'm not going to tighten them down just yet. Alright, so I've got the flywheel on, and I've got the ignition coil in. Got the cable in, I believe the correct position, and reinstalled the impulse line. I'm reusing this impulse line. It actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. If you bend the hose and you can see cracks, then you want to definitely replace that. Also, reusing this boot, same situation. If you flex it like this and you see any signs of cracking, then you're going to want to definitely replace that. This is offset, so what I did was I noted how it was installed on the cylinder I just took it off of, and I noticed that this little line right here, this little seam line that's left over from when they mold this piece of rubber, was actually facing almost straight down and just a little to the right, so that's how I installed it. And then the only thing I did differently was this clamp, I switched it around so the screw head's on the left, because it's a lot easier to tighten it on that way, because this is in the way. So I probably should have put that on before I put this cylinder in here, but I don't think it's going to make a difference that I've got that screw facing the other way. Alright, I just installed the oil pump. Pretty straightforward. This plastic sleeve right here, this output pipe, actually slips over a nipple that has a little tiny O-ring on it. Of course, the oil on the O-ring makes that go a little bit easier, but that's still kind of a tight fit getting that in. So you don't worry about this hose, because this hose you can pull down out of the way from underneath here. And so you get this on first, and once you get this pushed on far enough, you'll know, because the screw holes will line up. Then you can bring this hose back up, push it on, and use some needle nose pliers to guide it home. Now I just got to make sure I get the right screws in there. And once I get the oil pump installed, there's this special flat washer right here. And this is actually marked, on one side it's marked top. This side right here is marked top. And I think they mean that that's the side that faces out. Which makes sense, because if I tried to put it the other way, this would actually kind of stick out and rub on the back of the clutch, and there's no evidence that it was doing that before. You can see there's just a little narrow wear mark there. And this is reverse thread. Alright, well, I apologize if the continuity of this video isn't so great, but it's been over a week since I messed with this. Last week was 4th of July week. I was away on a camping vacation, and don't quite remember where I left off, but I do remember that one of the last things I had noticed was that I had improperly installed this wiring right here, that the high tension lead right here that goes up to the spark plug boot is supposed to be to the left, and that the other two wires are supposed to be to the right. So now I've switched them around, and it actually fits in there a lot better once I did that. But to do that, I had to take this out again and basically do this all over again. So this is the routing of the wire. For anybody who's putting this back together, I think I've got this correct. The wires sit in this slot and then go behind the two cables wrap around, and then the two terminals go into this screw, and then of course this screw has a washer. So I think now that I've got that correct, I think now when I put this assembly right here on, I think that the high tension boot should line up with that slot, which is what clued me into the fact that something was wrong. Now with the wires reversed, or in the correct position, you can see that when this plastic piece is put in place, it lines up perfectly. The high tension cable lines up perfectly with the slot. So then you just kind of push it in with a blunt object. I used the back of the screwdriver and popped it into that ridge. Of course, it's going to go into this clip, and now that's all set. All right, so I'm getting ready to reattach this handle assembly, which is kind of a bear. So one of the things I want to do first is install my new fuel line. So this fuel line, the curved S-curved shaped part goes down in the tank, and then this grommet snaps into here, and then you'll see that there's actually a flat on the side right here. That flat rides right up against that right there, and that's what basically guarantees that this is oriented correctly, or in the optimum place, so that when the fuel filter is in the tank there, it's in a good position. So that's what the fuel line looks like installed. This impulse line has to this is where things get a little tricky. All right, so remember this wiring harness right here had this grommet on it. Well, I slide the grommet up near the end, and I pop the grommet into this hole, this larger hole directly below where the manifold pokes through. Okay, then I'm going to pull those wires out through the grommet, shorten them as I bring this into position. At the same time, we've got to make sure that the fuel line pops up through this hole right here, where my finger's coming out. Okay, and that impulse line goes through this hole right here, and then it actually snaps into position so that it's held captive. Okay, right there, that hole. And also we've got to get this rubber manifold, this mess here, to collapse down and come through this hole right here. Now they actually suggest putting a piece of string around that to basically keep this held collapsed so that you can pull it through. And then also, while I'm doing all that, I gotta try and hook this over this, I believe this is called an annular bushing or something like that, or annular something, I forgot what. But anyways, so I'm not positive whether or not that was supposed to be removed. No, I think that's supposed to be there, and then this pops over it. All right, so I thought about the purpose of this string trick and everything, and it occurred to me that maybe I could come up with a better way of doing this. So what I've got is I've actually got a deep socket on here. This is a 14mm deep socket. This is the largest socket that will still pass through that hole. Okay. And then what I did was I folded over the flange, or the ears, so to speak, of that manifold, and I tucked it into the socket. Okay, so that's going to sit on there like that. So far, so good. I've got the socket coming through the hole here. I pull the wires through the grommet as I move it forward that way. I'm going to reach behind here and make sure that this impulse line gets pushed into here. And then I'm going to push that all the way until it fully seats. So I just got that screwdriver tip in there to help get it through, pop through the hole a little bit. Now that it's out that far, I should be able to grab it with my fingertips and actually pull it into position. And when you get it through, it'll pop right out into there, and now that's in the correct position. And you're supposed to look behind here and make sure you don't have anything kinked. And I think that fuel line is on the wrong side. Oh, well, the fuel line is supposed to come up through this hole here. See, I already messed up. All right, now we have fuel line up through this hole in the bottom here. All right, so now I'm going to continue moving this whole assembly forward and pulling those wires out, and then hopefully that that manifold end will stick out through here, and then when I pull the socket off, it'll hopefully be in the right position. That actually worked really well. So the next thing I did is I positioned this cable, this wire right here, so that little spade connector snaps back onto this little metal leaf switch, okay? And then the wire, the way the wire is routed is it routes up and it's pressed between these two plastic pieces right here, loops down, and then goes underneath this plastic piece right here and up over this round piece and then down to the grommet. So you're going to make sure that this wire is on this outside side of this stud before you start routing the wire, because if it's on the inside here, then you're going to have a problem. So that's that. I think I can leave this wire for the time being until I actually put this trigger rod, the rod that goes in here that acts as the switch to. Basically what happens is this is on that rod. When the rod's in the correct position, this shorts out against this and kills the ignition. And then I just got this annular thing, well, like bushing thing, got that to pop in, and that's kind of just a matter of reaching behind them with a little pry, something to pry with, and popping it through. And then the way these work is that there's a plastic plug that's going to go back in here, and when that plug is inserted in here, that keeps this from being able to collapse and pull out of there. So that's what locks it in there. But what it does is it isolates this housing that I just put on here, which is the handle housing, okay, from the main body of the saw, which is where all the vibration is happening. Well, it's 10 p.m. and I think this is a good enough spot for me to quit for tonight before I attempt figuring out how this whole mess goes back together. I did already last week when I was working on this thing, or a couple weeks ago, I did install this metal band, and I'm not even positive whether or not I should have done that yet. That might be something that might be easier to put in later, because there's a little linkage that hooks onto this. So that is going to be the next challenge. All right, when last I stopped working on this, I was about to start on figuring out how this all went together, this whole mechanism. And one of the things that was perplexing me was this little lever right here and this little spring that I had in my parts. I think this fell apart while I was disassembling it. I was wondering, it kind of fell out. I was wondering what the heck the deal was with it. Well, now I realize, or I'm almost positive, that what's going on is that right here, this hole right here is supposed to have a pin in it that hooks to. Everything that I looked at in parts diagrams seems to indicate that would be the case. So I'm missing a pin here, and I'm going to have to find something to make up for that. All right, so I have no idea what the pin that was in here looked like, but I found a screw. It's probably a small metric screw from something electronic, and it's actually a perfect fit. It actually threads in there and cuts threads in the hole, so it's pretty secure. I don't know how far it should be sticking out. I did check, and I can get this cover on, so I'm going to try it there right now. So that's basically the anchor for this little spring, which holds this little cam lever right here. So I've got that in position. Now I've got to get this mess on top all put together without having that pop off, because this, what keeps this down is actually when I put this lever on. So this assembly right here is oriented this way. the hook up at the top here is where the big spring is going to hook onto. The strange hook shape at the bottom there actually is what sits down inside here on the brake band, and then this part right here actually slides into a slot right on that, slides right into that slot there, and when the hole is lined up, when all the holes are lined up, they have to pop down over that, and this all has to kind of like be done together at the same time, so it's tricky. I started to get it into position. I just wanted to show how it goes. So this claw on the bottom here hooks into the band, and then this is going to go down over this pin right here, and then that hole, those holes have to line up. That has to go down over that, but you can see that cam lever is actually being held up by the spring, so that has to be pushed down so that this can go down. And this is what it looks like installed. You can see the little cam, the little lobe on that cam lever is actually sits in this detent on this plastic part right here. This is now seated correctly. It's looking like I might have to screw this screw in even further, because that screw head might impede with the action of the spring. This large spring now has to be installed, and that hooks on here and goes across over to this pin here. Next, I'm going to install this little locking plate, and the way this works is there's a stepped hole here. So what I have to do is I have to put it on there like that, and then this has to move over, right, just like that, and then you lift up on this side so you can get it to go over the top of this pin here. But before you put that on, this special washer actually sits on here like this. Alright, I picked up a new E-clip because the one that was here originally, I don't know if I lost it, if it went flying or what, but it's not a bad idea if you've got a new one to not reuse the old one. I installed the new spring on this side, and I've got to pull this over onto that pin, and that's easier said than done. It's a very strong spring. Whew! I finally get this spring on. I don't know if I have too many tips on working with this, but first I kept this end hooked, and I kept trying to pull this over and get this over this pin here, but it's kind of a tight fit in here. You don't have much room to work with. Kind of makes it kind of difficult. So then I gave up on that approach, and I decided to keep this end hooked and pull this part right here, which is easier to grab onto. And what I did was I grabbed some needle nose pliers, needle nose vice grips, and clamped onto that, so I had something I could really grip that with and pull. And then this, when the spring's not on here, this wants to basically pop over in this direction, which makes it even a farther distance. You have to a further distance that you end up having to pull this. So what I did was I moved the handle into the release position, and then got this to swivel back to where it is right now, and then stuck this small screwdriver in here and kind of held it like that. That kept that from wanting to go like this, so that I only had to pull the spring from there to about here and get it to pop on. Now the spring's on, so I can actually, at this point, I could throw the outer part of the clutch here on, and then put the screw in missing on the handle on the back there, and I could actually test this mechanism. I think I'm going to do that now before I put this cover back on. And the other side of the handle is just held in by this strange cup-like device or washer and a screw. Well, it won't stay, it keeps staying in the locked position. It won't come all the way back, but I noticed that when I try and rock this back, this lever is coming up and it's hitting that screw head of the screw I put in there as a makeshift pin. So it looks like my initial thoughts about that sticking out too far are correct. So I'm going to have to screw that back down, and unfortunately I can't really get to it with this spring in the way. So after all that work of getting that spring on, I'm going to have to take it off again. Well, I screwed that screw in farther now, so it's not further, so it's not interfering with the mechanism, and I think it's going to work okay. But I get the spring back on, and for some reason this time I'm having even a harder time than the first time. So the first time I was able to hold this screwdriver with one hand and kind of pull this thing and keep the whole thing steady. I'm having a real hard time with that. So what I did is I got my screwdriver stuck in there to pull this lever over this way, which moves this back, which shortens the distance from here to that pin to make it a little bit easier. But to keep that in that position like that, I wrapped a piece of wire around here and around the stud right here and just gave it a few twists so it's nice and tight. Hopefully that won't fall off. Now that's going to give me the ability to have both hands free as I try and keep this saw in position and pull as hard as I can to get this thing to slip on. I'd get really, really close, and then this screwdriver would move a little bit, and that lever would move this way, you know, just move even further out of my range. Okay, so what I did was I held it down here on the shop floor, kind of between my legs, so that I could pull up in this direction. It was much easier to do it that way. It was all a matter of getting that extra leverage and being able to hold that saw from wanting to come forward as I'm pulling on it here on the bench. So I got that in there now. So now if I take this screwdriver out, all right, so now with that screwdriver removed, right now that should be in the, yeah, that's in the on position right there. But I should be able to move this handle back. That should engage this cam that will release the tension on the spring, I believe. Ah, eureka. So when I pull it back, I got a nice crisp snap as the cam mechanism does its job, and this is now released. Okay, so, and then if we pop this lever forward, pop it, yeah, there we go, pop it forward, simulating a kickback, and that snaps this brake on. Now when I cleaned up these parts, they were so dirty that I didn't even realize it at the time, but it turns out that this cover is broken. So this little piece right here is supposed to go on here like that, but it's cracked right off right there. So I could get a new one of these covers. Problem is I really don't want to buy one, but I'm looking at this, the way this is designed, and I really don't see how this is going to be able to slide out of position there. Now if the cover wasn't on at all, maybe over time that would work its way sideways and try and pop out, and the cover keeps dirt and debris from getting inside here, I guess, somewhat. But I think there's just enough of this cover left here covering the band right here. You can see that right here, this area of the band is being covered by the cover just enough to keep it captive, I think. So I think I'm just going to roll with that, and we'll just have to throw this out because there's no way that that's going to stay put. It's just going to fall out. Well, next up, I'm going to put on the pull start mechanism, because this has to go on before the handle goes on, I think. Oh, you know what? Just realized that goes, this part is actually behind this, so I got to undo this. Okay. Well, now that I got the pull starter back on, I decided to throw the spark plug in. I just hooked up a ground wire to the outer electrode there and hooked it to this metal leaf contact right here, which is grounded to the engine. And if I pull the, see if I can hold this while pulling the pull starter. Well, I don't know if that came out on video, but it's got spark. Oh, here's a tip for you. Make sure you mount this exhaust stud on the engine before you put this cover in place, because I can't get it behind there now. But luckily, there's a screw right here. If I take this screw out, I can just flex this cover out, I think, far enough to get this in there and then put that screw back in. Next I'm putting in these things. I forgot what these are called. They're not isolators, they're, I don't know, some other kind of doohickey. But they isolate the vibration of the engine from the handle to reduce fatigue. So the way these go in is these actually snap in from the back side into these holes. So there's a lip there that will snap, that will end up going into this ridge right here and keeping them captive. And then a screw goes down the middle to attach them to the rest of the motor or the frame. All right, coming into the home stretch, put some of the large screws in that hold these isolators in and the handle on, two that go in the bottom here. This actually looks like a screw hole, but it's not. If you look real closely, there's actually markings on it. There's actually a little arrow there, and I believe it's got the letter E. And so there's a screw. There's a hole right there, an access hole. So there is an adjustment of some type right up this hole. You can actually feel it. So I don't know what that is. Judging by where it's heading, I think it actually might be an adjustment on the oil pump. I don't remember seeing anything on there, but I think there's an adjustment on the oil pump. Maybe you can actually regulate how much flow you get from the oil pump to the chain. It's the only thing I can guess at the moment. Anyways, so I got to figure out where the rest of these screws go. There's a hole here, but oddly enough, this large screw doesn't want to go down there. So I don't want to force that. I can always look at the parts manual for guidance. I know that no screw goes in here. What actually holds this captive on here is this just snaps over the rubber piece, and then this plug right here actually gets pushed into here and is what keeps that from popping out. Just like that. Oh, no, that is a large screw that goes in here. I don't know why it wouldn't go in for me. Might have been a plastic burr in there. Alright, nearing the home stretch on assembly, other than the carburetor and the throttle linkage. And I've got 3 screws left, which is bothersome. Now these two, I know they go right here. They hold this metal jagged bark biter on here. And I've got a stud that goes in here. But I've got a small screw. It's got smaller thread, smaller diameter, short one left over. That is disconcerting. The only place where I saw screws that size were these two that hold this cover on, which are already in. And I think that maybe not this cover, but the cover that's underneath it, that had those size screws. Maybe I missed one of those. Well, somehow I've managed to misplace the vent. There's a hose that hooks on here, comes up through this hole, wraps around here, and there's a little vent device. It's almost like a check valve. So since the battery on the camcorder is about to die and it's getting late, I'm getting tired, I think I'm going to quit for tonight and look for that tomorrow.